this is the variables and constants activity. I've got the Java version of the README open. I'm actually going to be looking at all 4 languages as a part of this and kind of condensing everything down into one video here. But definitely want to take some time and research each language and how it deals with variables and constants. What I want to do is talk first conceptually about what a variable is. It's a weird thing if you're not used to computer programming. A variable, think of a variable as a named container or a bucket. It's a container, something that can hold on to objects, hold on to data. And it's an area in memory that has a name. So we give variables names so that way we know where the bucket is, but the bucket or container has the object in it. Think of it like a big Tupperware box or a big shipping container. So the container itself is just a name that has stuff inside it. It's not the object, it holds on to objects. So that's the idea of a variable. It's a container or a bucket where we can store objects and data inside it. The next thing I want to talk about with variables is data types. So a variable in strongly typed languages are going to have a specific data type. These are languages like C# and Java. In C# and Java, these are strongly typed languages, which means the shape of the bucket for the variable has a very specific shape. It is a concrete shape, and you can only put things in that bucket that match that shape. Basically, we can only put things into a variable that are in the class that we've defined for the variable or deriving from the class we've defined for a variable. So in C# and Java, if we create a string variable, we can only put strings inside that variable, string objects into that variable. So the shape of the container, the shape of the bucket, if you will, is going to be very specific, and we can only put things that have that shape inside them. Now, other languages like Python and JavaScript are loosely typed languages or dynamically typed languages. What this means is the variable itself, the shape of it will change to match the data that goes inside of it. So the shape of containers and variables in loosely typed languages, JavaScript and Python, the variable can take virtually any object inside it, and you can, and again, the shape of the container will adjust based on what comes inside. So that's a very big difference between strongly typed languages like C# and Java and loosely typed languages or dynamically typed languages like JavaScript and Python. So that's what's going on with the data type. So in JavaScript and Python, any variable can hold any data type. In C# and Java, variables can only hold data types that are the same type as the variable or derive from the type of the variable. So that's an important distinction. We'll look at that here in a moment. The last thing is to talk about constants. So constants are like variables. They're a named container that holds onto data or objects, but a constant cannot change. In fact, programmatically, we're not even allowed to change it. It is fixed. Once you set the value, you cannot change it to a new thing. You can't put a new object into that bucket. Once that bucket goes in, once the object goes into that bucket, we seal the bucket. The bucket is not allowed to reopen to let something else go inside instead. So that's a constant. So it's like a variable, except it does not change. Variables vary. We can put different values in them. Constants are constant. They don't change. So once you put a value inside that bucket is sealed off. We cannot change the value inside it. So let's look at a couple of examples real fast. We'll start off with C#. I've got a real quick C# application here, a little file here. So if we were to create a variable, let's say name, and we'll set this equal to Chad. So now the shape of the variable is a string. And so I'm saying var, but really it's the same as saying string because it's a strongly typed language. The shape of the variable name is a string, so I can only put string values into it. The equal sign tells me I'm putting something in, and what I'm putting in is the object that is a string with the value Chad. So Chad, in this case, is the object. It's not the variable. It's the object, and it's going into the variable name. So name is still a variable. It just holds onto an object whose value is Chad. Now that I have name, I cannot assign it to 1. I'm going to get a compiler error. I cannot even compile this, let alone run it. 1 is not a string. 1 is an integer. Therefore, I'm not allowed to put that value in. But I can assign it to something else, like my last name. So now I can reassign name to a new value, Greer, and it works just fine. Then if I wanted to create an integer, and at 32, we'll call it x. Let's set that equal to 1. Now again, I cannot say x is Chad. That doesn't work because Chad is a string. It is not a 32-bit integer number. So that doesn't work. This object is not allowed to be put into the variable of x because the type of x is a number. So that doesn't work, but I can say x equals 4. Now in C#, I can declare a variable as constant by putting const in front of it. So now if I say, let's call it first name, I'll say Chad. Now if I try to reassign that to Greer, I'm going to get a compilation error again. The reason for that is first name is defined as constant. So I cannot reassign the variable to a new value. So that's basically what we have going on here. So let's look at Java. It's going to be very, very similar actually. So if I say string name equals Chad, similarly, if I try to put 1 in, this is going to give me a compilation error. This does not work in Java because 1 is not a string, but I can assign it to my last name, just like we did in the C# code. So those look very, very similar. Now, if I were to create an integer and set that equal to 1, again, I cannot set x to Chad because Chad is not an integer. So this doesn't allow me to put that value inside, and this will not work. But I can set it equal to, let's say 4, like we did in C#. So this code, just like in C#, works just the same. So Java and C# are both strongly typed languages, statically typed languages, which means the variables have a very specific shape, and we can only put values inside that match that. In the Java world, we don't use the const keyword, we use the final keyword. So again, I could say final first name equals Chad. This works just like constant, it's final, I cannot reassign it. So if I try to say first name equals Greer, once again, just like in C#, I'm going to get a compilation error on this line. This does not work. So we're going to switch gears. We're going to look at the dynamically typed languages now. Let's switch over to JavaScript. So in JavaScript, we don't say the type in front of a variable. So if I wanted a named variable, I would need to either use let, var, or const. I'm going to start with let. Let is a kind of default way of declaring variables that can vary. Var does work. It's an older way of doing things, and it's generally not recommended. There are some potential problems with var and scoping. Let is the generally recommended way to declare a variable. So I'll say let name equal Chad. Now if I say let name or name equals 1, this works. And the reason this works is in JavaScript, name is not statically typed, so it has not taken on a specific shape. Name will change its shape as a variable to whatever object I'm putting inside it. So this actually works in JavaScript just fine. In addition, once it's a number, I can also change it back to a string by assigning a string value into the variable. So the variable, again, is going to change its size and its structure to match whatever data we're putting inside of it. Similarly, I can do the same thing if I declare x as 1. I can say x now equals Chad. This works. This works just fine in JavaScript. It does not work in C# or Java, but JavaScript works just fine. And again, I can set it to 4. Now finally, we do have a const keyword in JavaScript. So if I say const first name equals Chad, and then I say first name equals Greer, this does not work. This is going to give me an error. Now we don't compile in JavaScript, so it's not a compilation error, it will be a runtime error, but it will error out because first name is constant. I'm not allowed to reassign this, so just like in C# and Java, this does not work in JavaScript. Last language, let's take a look at Python. It's a little different than the other languages. It's going to be more similar to JavaScript, but a little bit different. So looking at Python now, let's declare name equals, Chad. I'll get rid of that. So name equals Chad, again, there's no variable type associated with it, much like JavaScript. So name is now a variable that holds onto a string. Now if I say name equals 1, again, this works. Python doesn't have a problem with this. It's going to change the shape of name to match whatever object we're putting inside. So this works just fine. Similarly, I can say name equals Greer, and it changes the shape of name back to a string. So it's now a variable that can hold onto a string as well as an integer. So the shape of that variable is going to change. So very similar to what we've got going on in the JavaScript world. If I do x equals 1, just like I did before, I can assign that now to Chad because it's a string in Python. This is totally fine. And then again, we'll assign it back to 4, and this works just fine. Now finally, let's talk about constants. This is where Python is interesting. Python does not have constants. By convention, if you wanted to declare a constant, you would do all caps. I call it screaming case, I'm not a fan, but you would do all caps and then assign this to a value, so first name. Now, if I tried to assign first name to Greer, this works. This works just fine. Python does not have constants. There's no way to enforce that first name is constant. The reason we have all caps is to suggest to other developers, hey, please don't change this. This is supposed to be constant. We don't want you changing this. And in fact, if you notice the IntelliSense, it's saying constant. It has constant there in parentheses. It's suggesting that it's a constant because it understands the naming conventions, but it's just a convention. It is not a hard requirement. Therefore, in Python, we can change values of quote-unquote constants because there is no such thing as a constant inside Python. So hopefully that helps to demystify what's going on with variables and constants. I do recommend taking some time to do some research more into variables and constants in the various languages, C#, Java, JavaScript, and Python. There's quite a bit more to go. In addition, it's good to look at these questions down on Objective 4, see if you can understand those, see if you can answer those. As usual, if you have any questions, let me know, but hopefully that helps with variables and constants.